Alright, I'm going to try and keep this under 10 minutes. This is basically an overview of the E46 325 Ci car that I'm doing a LS swap in. I'm using a LQ4 out of a GMC truck, a new water pump, fresh new gaskets. That's usually the stuff you would want to do to an engine just to keep it running good, and especially if you're high revs, new gaskets, it just sort of makes sense. Z32 transmission out of a Nissan 300ZX. I would definitely recommend it over a T56. T56 would definitely be more ideal, but they are more expensive, and I could not find one for the 4 months or so that I've been looking for one. Standalone harness that I'm doing myself. I'll have a video up later on how to do that. But basically, pulled the 2.5 liter out of the car, painted the engine bay gray because that's the color I'm going to paint the interior. I'm using E46 CX Racing motor mounts. They work just fine on the E46. They're a little bit cheaper up in Canada, and they line up the engine perfectly. More so Racing oil pan just to clear the subframe in the front here, because there's just not quite enough clearance. Need the more so oil pickup for that too. But other than that, the engine fits in the car pretty good. I'm not sure about the transmission yet. I think it might be a little bit long. Car's Oxford Green 2 metallic or whatever you want to call it. I like it. A lot of people don't like it. It's more of a personal preference. I did put a roll cage in the car just recently. It is a Roll Cage Components E46 roll cage kit. Just sort of built it with those parts because it costs less to buy it already pre-bent in DOM than it costs to buy DOM separate at metal supermarkets in Calgary, because it's pretty overpriced. I'm gonna run a hydro e-brake in the car. The lines are coming. Probably switch that out with a Willwood master cylinder. Did not go with an ASD or a nameless just because they cost a lot, and it's basically just a lever. It's only the master cylinder that really matters. But it's a completely rust-free car. That's most of the reason why I got it. I like coupes because I don't feel like you should have 4 doors if you only have 2 seats. Just refreshing some of the suspension components and undercoating it right now. Other than that, gonna paint the interior gray. The reason I chose gray, like a lot of other guys on YouTube are choosing, I personally like it because in the summer it doesn't get as hot as black. Black would look really clean, but again, it gets super hot here in the summer, and that's when I'm going to be driving it, and I don't feel like having heat stroke. In the rear here, there's the fuel cell. I'm not going to be running the stock tank. Basically, I made like a little jack point right there, just where the fuel cell is going to mount to. I did have to cut the middle because it is a bit offset for the AN lines. I will be running the fuel cell backwards, or not backwards, facing forwards, which a lot of people don't like. I personally think it's just easier. I'm not worried about fuel starvation. I have a good pump, and I'm going to be running the tank pretty full most of the time. So that's basically the rear end. I'll probably redo that and tube frame it later, but for now I'm just trying to get the car going. I've got the ducktail spoiler on it just so it doesn't look as rental car-y. I'm not a huge fan of like huge wings. That's just personal preference though. I did get some extra wheels here, just painted them gray. Nothing too special yet. Probably going to put some Koenig wheels on in the future. Going to be running a dual caliper setup for that hydro e-brake. And I've decided to go with M series calipers because why not? They're a lot better than the stock ones, I feel like. These are the brackets. I'm going to weld them on. It's pretty basic stuff, just like hydro e-brake install. I am going with the Sparco Sprint seats because the stock ones were gross. Just the stock LQ4 power steering pump. The radiator, I'm going to be using the Eastwood Tri-Flow radiator because it was cheap, and I feel like I should give the Tri-Flow a try. That's the Ford Chrysler radiator, but for my inlet-outlet position, it should work better than the GM version. Full AN fuel system there with just the pump and the filter. Still waiting to install that. 300ZX clutch. That's a stage 3. It's a 4-puck, I guess you would call it, clutch disc, because I'm not sure how much more power it will be making. I plan to get to 350, 400 wheel horsepower. Ideally 350, just like maybe with like a cam and headers, and then I want to get above 400 to the wheels. After that, I'm not sure what I'll do to it yet, maybe forced induction in the future. There's a flywheel. It's pretty much just all you need for the adapter. You need the flywheel, and then there's like an adapter ring. But other than that, it's a pretty good swap to do. A lot of power for a smaller car, which is kind of what I was going for. Probably end up doing coilovers and maybe bigger brakes later. I'm not too worried about that right now. Full interior has had the sound deadened and dry ice removed. Wiring, I'm just going to redo the wiring in the whole car because I feel like I could do it a lot cleaner than it is in the factory state right now, because I don't need a lot of the wires right there that are still in the car. Rewire all the brake lights and stuff. Got rid of the factory dash bar just because I feel like it looks a lot cleaner if you just use the roll cage bar there. Welded, made a little bracket for the steering wheel to go there. Other than that, it's pretty basic interior. I want to try and keep it simple, super clean. Gonna clean it up a lot before I paint it, do a bunch of stuff to it. Exterior paint will probably be the same. Maybe black out this trim here because it's chrome right now and I don't really like that. Other than that, just simple engine bay, simple interior. Overall, pretty simple car. No tints on the windows or anything stupid like that. Might do Lexan or polycarbonate rear windows, but I'll see. I don't feel like I need them right now. But other than that, it's pretty basic car. These BMWs are great to work on because you can take the whole front clip off of them instead of having that radiator support. It's all removable. Makes it a lot easier to work on. You can basically pull the engine out of the front of the car, which makes it super simple. That's one of the reasons why I like working on BMWs. There's an inline 6 from the factory, which means there's a lot of room in the engine bay to put a V8, so I decided to put a V8 in there. Custom drive shaft will probably happen soon, as soon as I get the engine to turn over and run, because I'm not really in a rush because it's winter right now and I don't want to drive it in the salt. And rear wheel drive welded diff with an LS might be a mess in the winter. But basically, just want to keep the car and try and track it. I'll probably end up selling it once it's done and move on to something else, but that's basically the E46 project. The reason I went with the E46 over the E36 is the E36 coupes are really hard to find in Calgary. They're not really that clean. E36s in general aren't that clean just because they have a little bit more age to them, so they've been through more salty roads. This had 145,000 K on it when I pulled the engine, so it's a pretty clean car, zero rust. That's why I did end up paying a little bit more than I would have liked to for a car. But again, you don't want to be putting all this stuff into a rusty chassis when you don't necessarily need to. It will save you a lot of trouble down the road. And basically, like, I'm not a BMW purist. I don't really get that, so I just decided to go with an E46. I could have gone with the typical Nissan 240, but again, I don't want to pay $7,000 for, or more than double what I paid for this for a rusted out car with a blown KA or something like that. I'd rather just have a fresh car to start with. E46s, they don't look that bad in my opinion. Definitely not as nice as an E36, but that's alright with me. Again, it's just the whole rust factor that I'm not really appealed to. I don't want to be working on a rusty car with everything that, like, I can put things in the sandblaster and clean them up, but there's only so much that I want to do. It's way simpler just to start out with a clean car. I'd highly recommend E46s just because they are going down in price still. They're not as popular as an E36, which in the long run you might be able to make some more money off of it, just because I feel like once the E36s are gone, these will be the next car that everyone will go to now that the 240s are starting to get beat. E36s are starting to go, and E46s are relatively untouched still. There's a lot of them for sale. Coupes are harder to find. They're about double the price of a sedan. I like them a little bit more. I definitely go with another coupe. They just look a lot cleaner in my opinion. But other than that, basically, E46 LQ4 Z32 trans. Hoping to get it running in a few months here. But other than that, it's basically just going to be a typical E46 race car that you could still drive on the street.